Tensions between the U.S. and China were at its highest last summer during former U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. Many analysts said it was China's excuse to trigger the Forth Taiwan Strait Crisis. With a report of the U.S. Department of Defense preparing for a potential Taiwan visit by current House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, we take a look at how China could react and what this means for the region's security and Taiwan's international space. Hi and welcome to Taiwan Talks, covering the latest global news and analysis from a Taiwan perspective. I am Catherine Lu.
I'm Rath Wang. Coming up on our show today, as Republicans win a majority in the U.S. House of Representatives, we discuss the likelihood in which the new House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, will visit Taiwan this coming spring, as support for the island nation is at an all-time high in Washington, D.C. Then we hear from Wang DPP legislator and convener of the Foreign and National Defense Committee at Taiwan's legislature on what another U.S. House Speaker visit would mean for the nation.
If China do some response toward this, especially using a military way to respond to this visit, that will be, I have to say, that would be stupid.
We will then discuss the implications of what a Kevin McCarthy visit could mean for Taiwan's security. Will it elevate Taiwan's status, or could it further give Beijing an excuse to intensify military operations around the Taiwan Strait? We also hear from Dennis Wang, Taiwan-born political science associate professor at Sam Houston State University, based in Texas, the United States, on what a Republican majority in the U.S. House of Representatives means for U.S. support for Taiwan.
The new Republican majority in the Congress, they will take a very aggressive actions, very aggressive stance on China, not only on the military front, but also various fronts in terms of economy, technology, trade.
Lastly, we will discuss how countries around the region are working together to counter Chinese aggression. We will also talk about how Taiwan has become an imperative part of the defense strategies of U.S. Pacific allies.
Welcome to the show. Joining us in the studio today to discuss this is Raymond Sun, Deputy CEO of the think tank Taiwan New Constitution Foundation, an expert in Taiwan's and the region's geopolitics, and Chen Fangyu, Assistant Professor of Political Science at Suzhou University, who was a visiting research fellow at George Washington University and the Global Taiwan Institution in Washington, D.C. Glad to have you both back on. Raymond and Professor Chen.
I spoke earlier to legislator Wang from the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, DPP. Wang is also the convener of the Foreign and National Defense Committee at Taiwan's legislature. He has extensively visited Washington, D.C. in strengthening Taiwan-U.S. security ties. And I also spoke earlier to Dennis Wang, political science associate professor at Sam Houston State University, based in Texas, the United States. Dennis was born and raised in Taiwan and is also an active advocate for Taiwan in U.S. political circles. Let's now talk about the possibility of a second U.S. House Speaker visit to Taiwan in less than 12 months. Our first question goes to you, Raymond. How possible do you think this visit will be, given that Nancy Pelosi's visit was just last summer?
I don't know. Actually, I would say it's a new game now, because I think several conditions contributed to Nancy Pelosi's visit. Her own wishes and her own strong political will and her long-standing stand on supporting human rights and democracy, and especially her wishes to support Taiwan's democracy. All those contributed to Nancy Pelosi's visit. But I will say several things. That's a new game. What's the new situations now? I think what brought by the Nancy Pelosi visit was the breaking up of the myth previously held that that kind of engagement between the U.S. and Taiwan is not permissible, which is being broken. Because I think the U.S. government made it very clear that the Speaker of the House make her own decision whether to visit or not to visit Taiwan. So it's not a question about capability, whether the U.S. can engage with Taiwan on that kind of level on that kind of so-called third highest official position of the United States. But rather, Nancy Pelosi is representing U.S. people. And people-to-people's engagement with Taiwanese people, there's no bar, any legal inhibition to Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. That's the first thing. So the second thing is that the U.S. government made very clear that Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan doesn't change U.S. government's position on Taiwan or its policy to Taiwan. It doesn't change. Okay. The third one is the responses and aftermath of the Nancy Pelosi visit, including the Chinese military drill around Taiwanese waters. So all those are made this current situation a new game, which means that there's no legal inhibition to for a U.S. House of Representatives Speaker to visit Taiwan. That's the first thing. But whether it's proper, the propriety question is a separate one. The second one is that that kind of engagement won't change U.S. policy toward Taiwan, which remains the same.
Do you feel there's more significance? I'll ask this to Professor Chen. Do you feel there's more significance with this visit compared to, say, Nancy Pelosi, as she was the outgoing speaker?
I would say that because we don't have an official confirmation yet, so but it is very we can expect such a visit because the Speaker McCarthy has already said that he will come to Taiwan if he got elected, right? So I think it's very important for Taiwan because it will encourage more and more high-level visits, and not only from the U.S. but also from other countries. We have already seen many visits from Europe and other states. So I think the most important part is that the U.S. encourage the allies that when they are dealing with Taiwan policies, then they become less and less likely to consider what called to avoid and intimidate China or something like that. So I think it's very important to develop a dualization of China policy and the Taiwan policy.
But do you feel what actually bears more significance, given that he's the new speaker?
Yeah, if that becomes a normal or regular visit from the U.S., high-level visit, then I would say that it will become very significant.
Do you see this as a coming trend, that it become the new normal for the new House Speaker coming to visit or even declare such intention before got elected?
Because we only can guess what's coming next, so we are not sure about that. But yes, because I think Taiwan has become a focal point in the international politics. So it's very important for the U.S. Politicians, if they can show that, so the U.S., there's some commitment, and if there's more and more high-level visits from the U.S., then it also contribute to the U.S. foreign policy credibility, because it shows that there has a strong support for Taiwan, the important ally, and that it will encourage more and more such visits. And it also shows the importance of encouraging more and more interactions at the working level. So because a high-level visit not only includes the high official themselves, but also includes some bureaucratic process. And it is very important because if there's more and more such mechanisms at the working level, then we can establish more regular dialogue mechanisms for cooperation. And that also applies to Taiwan and other countries. So we can expect that. So I think that will be very important for Taiwan and also for the U.S.
Have we seen that increase in the past year since Pelosi came to Taiwan?
I think so, because there are so many visits. I think our foreign ministry is very busy, so there are so many visits, not only from the government, but also from the Congress and also think tanks, scholars from all over the world. So I think that's a very positive trend for Taiwan.
Raymond, if we talk from the U.S. perspective, does this reflect the bipartisan support that's growing in D.C. for Taiwan?
Oh, yes, yes. I think that's an excellent question, because the first thing this new House of Representatives did was to create a select committee on China, which will aiming to review the policies and define the U.S. vulnerabilities in the aim to strengthen U.S. strategic competition with China in terms of military, economic, and technological spheres. that will review issues including unfair trade practice of China and Chinese activities to overrule the rule-based international order and to maintain the U.S. technology edge, including, for example, to strengthen or continue the semiconductor export
with the CHIPS Act and all that.
bans imposed by the U.S. and to foster the U.S. value and influence in Indo-Pacific, etc. So Kevin McCarthy is one of the key, if not a supporter of that initiative. And I also see a latest piece in The Economist seem to view this action by the House of Representatives as a risk to stumble the U.S.-China relationship. But I would like to say that's what the Select Committee will do is consistent with the long-term strategic imagination or vision of the U.S. government for over 20 years, that China is a rival to compete with the U.S. hegemony in the Indo-Pacific and disruptor to the international rule-based order, which we need to contend, and the U.S. need to do something to enhance its competitiveness edge and to do something to strengthen its own military muscles and to support its allies.
It's interesting you mentioned
this.
It's
a long-term policy. It's rather than one single action made by a Republican majority House of Representatives.
It's interesting you mentioned this because U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is scheduled to go to China to have these high-level talks on the 5th and 6th. Will this complicate things, or do you feel it actually plays into what the U.S.
also
is achieving?
It's very clear that under President Biden and of course Secretary Blinken is one of the key players here, that their policy remains the same. That will strengthen the U.S. powers and strength in the course of engaging with the strategic competition with China. But President Biden also made very clear that when it comes to issues inconsistent with U.S. interests, the U.S. will cooperate with China. For example, for the global concern issues like climate change, that the U.S. will cooperate with China. And what Mr. Biden met Xi Jinping in Bali next November, or whether the February, the forthcoming visit of Secretary Blinken to China remains the same. That's the main aim, is to keep the communication channel open and to keep the high-level dialogue continuing. So to avoid conflict, to manage their differences, also to foster, when possible, areas of cooperation.
Professor, I'm also very curious, amid the discussion of Ukraine, would such a statement or such plan will close the door between the conversation and dialogue between China and the U.S.?
I think that's up to China. And we have already seen a lot of wolf warrior diplomacy there, and we don't see any sign of a decrease of using that approach. So I think it's always up to China because there's a lot of domestic issues in China, and China needs to rely on the nationalism and patriotism to maintain the high leaders' popularity. So I don't see any sign of improvement of the U.S.-China relationship in a short time. And I have to emphasize that the U.S.-China relationship is in a competition relationship. It is made very clear by the U.S. And I think this relationship is structural. So it will not be influenced by a short-term events. So this is a long-term structural event, and that will shape maintain such a competition relationship between U.S. and China.
We just spoke about how likely Kevin McCarthy, the new U.S. Speaker of the House, could visit Taiwan this spring and what that means for the country's visibility and security. Coming up next, we'll be hearing from Wang, DPP legislator and convener of Foreign National Defense Committee at Taiwan's legislature, who is also a frequent visitor to Washington, D.C.
Let's now hear from legislator Wang Dingyu from the ruling DPP. Wang is also the convener of the Foreign and National Defense Committee at the Legislative Yuan, the nation's legislature. He has extensively visited Washington, D.C. in strengthening Taiwan-U.S. security ties. Wang spoke to me about what another U.S. House Speaker visit would mean for the country. Let's take a look.
China, they are always be angry when Taiwan has a normal contact with the international society. So McCarthy or somebody else, whoever try to visit Taiwan, if this one is important to some political meaning, China has some response toward that. That's their standard operation. So I cannot predict if McCarthy visit Taiwan or not. But McCarthy's visit is a normal activities between Taiwan and the United States. And if China do some response toward this, especially using a military way to respond to this visit, that will be, I have to say that would be stupid, because in the world, a lot of people would like to visit Taiwan because Taiwan is an important place. We occupy the strategic position in Indo-Pacific area, and in industrial supply chain, Taiwan play a very important role. So the interactivities between Taiwan and the international society is a normal situation. Threat nobody, endanger no one. As I recall, it's July when the international society discussed Pelosi visit Taiwan. McCarthy made a statement. If he elected as Speaker of the House, he said at that moment, last year, July, he said if he elected as Speaker of the House, he will organize a delegation to visit Taiwan in the spring in 2023. According to my information, Speaker McCarthy, he is interested in visit Taiwan. However, in United States, there are so many things, domestic business need to take off, especially during the very strong competition of the speak election. So we respect McCarthy's decision if he visit or not. However, I have to say, between Taiwan and United States, no matter arms sales or somebody significant visit Taiwan, this decision must be made by United States, and Taiwan cannot be interfered by China. If we allow China using military way, economic way, or diplomatic way to get involved the policy making procedure between Taiwan and United States, that will be encouragement to a crook country like China to using more severe way to stop something they don't want, and always try to squeeze Taiwan in the international rooms.
This is a new normal for Taiwan.
It's not a new norm, because House Speaker visit Taiwan. If McCarthy visit Taiwan, that will be the third time. So McCarthy or somebody else, and some minister from United States, even some minister from Europe, that's a normal, I have to say, that's a normal situation between two countries. If you try to do business with Taiwan, if you recognize Taiwan is on the front line of democracies, if you realize how important Taiwan's position in this region, how can you not engage with Taiwan? But we have to take a look at China. No matter McCarthy or Pelosi visit Taiwan or not, their fighters, their destroyers threat Taiwan every day. even they don't visit Taiwan. Now, my house just across the Tainan Air Force Base, I can hear the thunder noise from the fighter's engine because PLA, they are sending their air fighters to harass our southeast ADIZ again every day. So Pelosi visit, McCarthy's visit, just an excuse for China. If there is no this excuse, they harass Taiwan, they try to invade Taiwan, they threaten Taiwan. China try to establish a new norm here. They try to establish who they don't want somebody else to visit Taiwan. They don't like some arms sales approved from United States to Taiwan. They will do something military way to increase the tension in this area. They are using military way to establish a new norm in this region. And if we allow them to do this, that will be very dangerous because the miscalculation and the misjudgment will be the potential risk in the modern world. Look at the Ukraine. When Putin misjudged, he can win the war within 72 hours. He did it. So if we allow China to do these things freely, we are allowing them to make a judgment on their own side, and that will be wrong, and that will destroy the global economy. These words are quote from Blinken.
So you feel that even with that, you don't think they'll use another excuse to attack Taiwan?
If Pelosi or McCarthy, they cancel the visit to Taiwan, will China stop using their air fighters to harass Taiwan? Obviously, no, they won't cancel it. They keep doing that. Their military drill, they're using their destroyer fleet to West Pacific to harass the east side of Taiwan Island. So they have their agenda. But when some certain situation happened, recently there is a good example. When South Korea, they announced Austin, the Minister of Defense from United States, will visit Korea. China, they send their air fighters to harass Korea ADIZ zone. Korea, they send their F-15K to monitor the situation in the air. So China, they are using this way not only toward Taiwan, they are using this way to try to establish a new Asia order here. The standard of response will be, if they don't like it, they will increase the tension in this region. Using this way, try to intimidate the world.
You just heard legislator Wang speak to Rath about what a Kevin McCarthy visit could mean for the nation's security. Now let's talk about what the actual means for Taiwan and the region. Professor Chang, last time when Nancy Pelosi visited, China used this as an excuse to launch a de facto blockade around Taiwan's water shortly after she left. What do you think if and when McCarthy does visit this time, and how would China react?
I don't think we have to care about when is the next time that China launches such a military drill, because China is always preparing for a variety of tools to force Taiwan taking unification offer or to get Taiwan into the political negotiation. So it's not very important for the time slot, but how we react to that. We have to understand that a blockade, not an invasion, could be less risky be less risky for Beijing to exert its will to Taiwan, because there's a high uncertainties for using force. But Beijing is trying to do more gray zone activities, including blockade, to force Taiwan into such a political negotiation. And also it is exercising its will to trying to intermittently influence Taiwan's economy and to erode popular support for the government so that maybe to decrease the resistance to Beijing. So I think it's very important. And those strategies are already discussed in China's military journals. So we have to prepare for that. But this time, I think there's a dilemma for Xi Jinping because last time we see a large scale of military drill and the blockade in decades. So he may fear to, Xi Jinping may fear to lose face. So maybe he has to respond even more strongly this time, so that he cannot be, for meet the demand from the China's foreign policy hawks this time.
So are we saying because Xi Jinping has secured his third term, right now a lot of policy, we see a major change. Right now, Xi Jinping's reaction could be less intensive?
It's not necessarily the case because, as I mentioned earlier, that there's a lot of domestic issues like economic slowdown and the pandemic, turbulence after the pandemic. So the political science theories tell us that this time the autocratic regimes will use other force or some other ways to transfer the focus from the domestic issues to foreign issues. So we have to be very careful about what China will respond this time.
Raymond, Professor Chen mentioned that there could be an even more heightened response from China this time around. What forms would you expect that to come in?
We will only have to watch and wait and see. Actually, I agree with Fang Yu that the military drill after Nancy Pelosi visit last August was much ado about nothing. Actually, on the part of China, that the Chinese could choose to react in a less provocative way, because actually the U.S. government has given their assurance that the U.S. policy toward Taiwan has not changed. And the Nancy Pelosi made her own decision, and they also only represented the American people. But it seems that Xi Jinping had other considerations like being afraid of losing face and wanting to show a strong hand. So it's really up to them, up to Xi Jinping to play down or to play up the situation. And actually the military drill last August was used as a pretext to exercise, to carry out their plans to intimidate, also coerce, and also with a view to influence Taiwan's election at the end of 2022, and also to show its hand to the region. And also in military terms, those can be avoided, of course. But if, on the other hand, these situations go the other way, then the Chinese Xi Jinping chose to play up the situation. Actually, he could exercise another games. In particular, in response to the CSIS military game, war game exercise, there are several different scenarios. Of course, all involves maritime blockade, and also, of course, air defense and deterrence and rejection. Of course, the Chinese military could use that opportunity to practice their skills in all those situations. But it is important to note that that will have also serious diplomatic fallout after that, because the region will be on high alert. And of course, we see all sides of the Indo-Pacific or in the Western Pacific wanted to decrease the political tensions. And also Chinese, hopefully, is also wanting to play down its military threat and to play down the likelihood of military invasion of Taiwan. And of course, U.S. also extending its own olive branch to the Xi Jinping.
With Blinken's visit.
Yeah. So all those will be derailed if she chose to, in the case of McCarthy visit, to choose to play up the situation.
Raymond, you say it's up to Xi Jinping play up or play down. But on the same matters, foreign mainstream media will describe Taiwan as troublemaker. So what do you point
Not
of
at
view
all,
on that?
Not at all. Actually, it's very clear. I also agree with Fang Yu on that point. It's very clear that the blockade has been prepared for years by the People's Liberation Army, and all those are, of course, they wanted to have this trial on their missile and to test the responses to their declaration of blockade zones, and how the shipping route will respond, and how Japan will respond. Of course, we see that in the very, very vivid situation when one of the Chinese missiles landed in the Japanese exclusive economic zone. And Japan viewed this as very, very highly as a threat, and uses as a legitimate reason to strengthening its military investment and expenditure, and to also to acquire counter activity capabilities. Of course, all those are also fallouts after Chinese military drills. Of course, they prepare for this. They prepare other situations for other situations as well. So they have testing. They are waiting for testing grounds. Whether Xi Jinping would choose to use those certain political situations to test their military preparation or not is a question up to Xi Jinping.
Raymond, I think you mentioned a great point, how it would have took China many months to be able to react to Nancy Pelosi's visit. It wasn't a direct response to that. In talking about the international community and how they respond, some analysts say that Nancy Pelosi's visit was actually symbolic and there wasn't a lot of substance. But some actually argue that there was substance because, as Professor Chen mentioned, there was a wave of foreign delegations, and that raised Taiwan's visibility significantly.
Yes.
If you could talk a bit about that.
Of course, yes. I think on the plane of diplomacy and international relations, we talk about the political fallout between China, America, and Taiwan. But there's not only that doesn't cover all of the Chinese Nancy Pelosi visit to Taiwan, because Nancy Pelosi also visit democracy park of Taiwan and speak to human rights activists from Xinjiang, from also the Taiwanese descendant being detained by China. So Nancy Pelosi made a very, very clear point about the importance of democracy and human rights, and about the key role Taiwan plays in defense, or in marking the remarkable contrast between Taiwan and China on that front. So that's also, it's less reported by international media, but Nancy Pelosi also, for us activists or NGO peoples in Taiwan, that's very important. That tells us that Taiwan is not fighting alone. Taiwan established its own democracy at a great effort, and out of to reach remarkable achievements, which has been seen by the important American politician who also devoted her whole life to the fight to secure human rights, to promote human rights and democracy, which is very important. That says to the value coalition building by the US government, by the US people, that the democracy and human rights is important, and it's also possible in this region, and Taiwan has made a good example of that. Of course, that's also very important of the Nancy Pelosi visit.
Professor Chen, do you think we'll see the same effect with a McCarthy potential visit?
Of course, yes. Yes, we could expect to see more and more high-level visit. Not for the
in terms of substance.
Yeah, for the U.S., I think it's very important for the building up their credibility in East Asia, because we have seen that the U.S. not only competing with China in East Asia, but also in Southeast Asia and other regions. So it's very important for them to have this kind of high-level officials visit to other allies. And also for Taiwan, it boosts the support. According to our research, it will have a significant effect to boost our support among the public to gain the support for the for military reforms by the Taiwanese government, the host government. Also, it gains the support for the alliance building. So it's very important for the U.S. and also for the host country to boost the popular support for the government and also for the military issues. Yeah.
I see. We just discussed whether another U.S. House Speaker visit could make Taiwan safer or more dangerous, and the efforts of Taiwan's diplomats in Washington to strengthen the nation's deterrence capabilities against the potential Chinese attack. Coming up next, we'll be hearing from Dennis Wang, political science associate professor at Sam Houston State University, on what a Republican majority in the U.S. House of Representatives means for this nation.
Let's now hear from Dennis Wang, political science associate professor at Sam Houston State University in Texas, the United States. Born and raised in Taiwan, Dennis is also an active in U.S. political circles and advocating for more support for Taiwan. He spoke to me about what a Republican majority in the U.S. House of Representatives means for the security of Taiwan. Let's take a look.
There's a congressional consensus that the Congress will support Taiwan. So if you ask me whether we will see a substantial support when we have the new a Congress, my answer will be yes and no. The reason why I say yes is because, like I said, the supporting Taiwan is a congressional consensus. But no means there's no not really we will see a big change, because both party will support Taiwan like we've already seen before. But there's something we need to know. The new Republican majority in the Congress, they will take a very aggressive stance on China, not only on the military front, but also various fronts in terms of economy, technology, trade. So the newly established the China selective connection on China apparently shows the new Congress will take various actions toward China. And we also need to know Taiwan, anything related to Taiwan is kind of part of the big China issue to the Congress. So yes, we will see more support from the Congress to Taiwan, but we will also be very careful, because we're going to see a very strong and very rigid competition between the U.S. and China, and the congressional support is good for Taiwan, but the competition, if the competition go too intense, then Taiwan need to be very careful, because we don't know which part, what kind of actions both parties will take.
In terms of Taiwan support, what support does it have in the different branches of government? Is it at the level of Ukraine?
Let's talk about the two different branches, legislative branch and the executive branch. We can see legislative branch, like the Congress, normally show a stronger support to Taiwan, because they have more room to express their concern, more room to express their worry. Also, one of the reasons is because they don't have the direct effect on the real policy. However, on the executive branch, the White House or the State Department, they have to be very careful. As long as there's the so-called one China policy, and as long as the U.S. does not try to change or intend to change the one China policy, then there's a very limited leeway for executive branch to say anything. We know the U.S. is with Taiwan, try to help Taiwan, protect Taiwan democracy, but the different branch, they have to take different actions given their power and given their constitutional constraint. There also something we need to know is that when we talk about Ukraine and Taiwan, they actually refers to different kind of threat. Ukraine is now fighting against Russia. It's a current problem, and Taiwan has to deal with China, but that's a potential issue, which is still manageable at this moment. For the U.S., they have to set up certain priority. Ukraine is definitely the priority. It has nothing to do with whether Taiwan or Ukraine is more important. It's about the current issue U.S. have to deal with, and U.S. have to take on this issue properly. Otherwise, the whole world will lose the confidence in U.S., especially the leadership. So what I'm saying is, in terms of comparison between Taiwan and Ukraine, we shouldn't say whether Taiwan is more important or Ukraine is more important. It's about whether U.S. can show its capability to handle the problem. If U.S. cannot do this properly, then we will have a lot of problem. We will have an issue on that. So at this moment, I think the U.S. is do whatever it takes to help Ukraine protect its democracy, help Ukraine fighting against Russia.
You just heard Dennis speak to Rath about what a Republican majority means for Taiwan's security.
We just discussed a U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy potential visit to Taiwan. Please let us know in our YouTube comment section below if you believe that China will use this as a pretext to cause a fifth Taiwan Strait crisis.
Let's now discuss how U.S. allies in the region are coming together to counter increasing Chinese aggression. Professor, before we dive into this topic, I want to focus on this person. Her name is Michelle Beacon, and according to New York Times, she is the most influential ambassador, and right now she's Taiwan's de facto ambassador to the U.S. And during this interesting time, because Taiwan right now has a brand new cabinet, and she's also very important, has a high visibility internationally. And how do you think she would navigate during this special timing to raise the visibility of Taiwan?
As I mentioned before, that the U.S.-China relationship is a long-term structural relationship with a competition relationship. And the U.S.-Taiwan relationship is also a long-term one. It's very stable. So what the Ambassador Shaw did in D.C. area is to make more friends with the U.S. officials, the congresspersons, NGOs, think tanks. So I think the key is trust. So the U.S. officials and the members in D.C. areas, no matter what positions, all trust Ambassador Shaw and also the team. I mean, our diplomatic team is always hardworking. And I think the most important part is the consistency. We have a very clear strategy, and we have a very clear strategy to stick with the diplomatic alliance all over the world. So we have a very clear direction, and we show our commitment to building up a better world with democratic values. So I think it's very important for us, and Ambassador Shaw and also the team work very hard to make more friends and to express that our commitment to that democratic values. So we can make friends with our democratic values in Washington, D.C. and also in other countries. So I think it's very important for Taiwan to maintain such a hardworking and to make more friends and to have more support from other countries to Taiwan. Yeah.
Is there a difference between the cat warrior diplomacy that Ambassador Shao is using opposed to the wolf warrior that China is using? If you could draw a comparison for our international audience here.
Of course, wolf warrior diplomacy is that we see a lot of Chinese officials that use a very rude words to describe other countries and to have they are very offensive to other countries, and even if they are just diplomats and they are very rude to other diplomats. Yeah. But cat, you mean that cat is always very cute and very soft, and they are highly adorable in many places, but it is also a warrior. I mean, just as Ambassador Shaw says that. So as a cat, she can do a lot of things. She can make a lot of good friends. And also she is very soft and she can do a lot of things. And the most important thing is that people love cat. Yeah.
So how does a cat fight a wolf?
We don't fight. We make friends. And we consolidate our democratic alliances. That is the biggest difference between cat and wolf. Yeah.
Speaking of democratic alliances, Raymond, wanted to ask you about how U.S. allies and other democratic allies in the region are coming together to counter Chinese aggression. We've seen Japan. If you could talk a bit about that and what trends you see in the region.
Okay, I think, of course, Japan and also the Philippines are the cases in point. And most remarkable is Japan. Actually, when we talk about military threat imposed by China, one of the victims is also Japan, because Japan is witnessing the huge increase of scrambles need to be launched to counter the Chinese invasion into the airspace near the Senkaku Islands. And also in China's view, it's a disputed territory. And also the regular incursions made by Chinese vessels into the waters surrounding that. And also, of course, the verbal threat of including using nuclear weapons to avoid Japanese involvement into the Taiwan situation was also used by the parallel official channels of Chinese media. And also, of course, the Japanese people are feeling threats from China and very unfriendly posters imposed by China. And also, we just see in the last month, at the end of 2022, the Japanese Prime Minister visited several countries, including NATO allies, and also including in Washington, D.C. to get their endorsement of the Japanese new plans of the defense planning, including increase to the Japanese expenditure on the level of the 2% of GDP, and also to strengthen its capability to counterattack. And also we see this was endorsed by the United States. Also, United States helping Korea, the Republic of Korea, to strengthen its capability to deter these possible threats and attacks. And also the Philippines are also working in that way to using, on the one hand, a friendly diplomacy, like a high-level visit of President Marcos to Beijing, and also to try to contain the situation in the South China Sea, to find a common ground that could be living together, to work together with China on the issue of South China Sea isolates. And also we see this in this region, many countries of this region are moving toward that direction. And one key player is also the United States. And also the United States makes it very clear that its interest lies with the Indo-Pacific. And it's important to this area, Indo-Pacific area, is important to the States. And they will build and further work